That's it.
Did that help? I mean, did that stop the breakage? Once you made those changes?
Well, I think so, but I can't prove that.
Yeah.
Hey, IF hasn't broken.
I don't know.
He's good. Please bite your tongue.
If it was hydrogen embrittlement, I'm not sure it did.
Yeah. Huh.
Because on that, it could go at any time. You don't know.
But I haven't heard a story of anyone with a four-wheel car having a broken torsion bar in the last 30 years.
Now that you say that.
Yeah. Good luck getting home.
Right. Another question, why did they not put fuse blocks in the cars in the 50s? Why did we end up with just straight hard wiring, and if something burns up, it all goes?
Well, there's a few circuit breakers in there.
Yeah,
I
a
don't
few.
know. When Levi Coca came over, he brought a bunch of people over with him. And one of the guys that was assigned to me was called Hans Matthias, was his name. And he came from engineering at Ford. The first thing that he told me about was that you do not have sealed, you do not have locking connectors. And I said, what do you mean, Hans? He said, well, you must have connectors, must be sealed against moisture.
Snap together.
They must be locked, so they're locked. We were relying on friction to keep them together, and they weren't sealed. And so, I'm not giving you a direct answer, but our standards weren't high enough in the case of wiring. And that was one case where Hans insisted that we change all wiring to sealed lock connectors, and we did.
I know in 1963, when I had my 300C, I know something went wrong, some little short went wrong, and there were three of us sitting in the front seat of the car, and all of a sudden the smoke just started billowing out from under the dash, and it fried apparently everything under the dash, because nothing was fused. We jumped out of the car and just watched it smoke until we got the thing disconnected. Then neat story with that is that I went to my insurance company and I said, hey, I guess I've got a claim. They said, yeah, well, we're going to have to find somebody to fix that. Well, the Chrysler dealer said, no, they couldn't take care of it for whatever reason. So they went to this garage who I had done some business with, and they said, would you be willing to put new wiring in this car for Mr. Boonstra? And he thought, I really, really don't want that job. So he said, yeah, I guess I'd do it for about $400. Now, we're talking 1963, about the equivalent of like, I don't know, $8,000 today or something like that. He knew he wouldn't get the job then. The insurance adjuster said, great, you got the job.
Got a terrible job.
And he had to do it, yeah.
In 1963 or early 60s, we didn't fuse headlamp circuits
Right?
intentionally.
Yeah.
We didn't want them fused because we didn't want to fuse going out losing headlights.
Yeah. But instead, but now my 57's got a breaker. I know I was in Elkhart Lake last year, and it's like 10:30 at night, black as all get out, and I'm following a couple of other cars, and I never had this happen before. All of a sudden, my lights are out, no headlights, and they came back on about, I don't know, 20 minutes later or something like that.
We did put circuit breakers.
There was a circuit breaker there, but unfortunately, you still end up with dead lights for a little while. And I finally just hardwired it right from the battery to the terminal block there, and I had headlights.
But I'm not sure that even today you can order a wiring harness for a 5-year-old car. I don't know, there was an engineer friend of mine that worked Chrysler forever named Everett Smith, worked lighting and wiring, ended up down in El Paso and Juarez. And he said, I think he ended up as a consultant and a troubleshooter after he retired. And occasionally they would call him up and tell him that they had an order for a wiring harness on an 8 or 10-year-old car. And expert would go out to a salvage yard, find the car, the same year and model, strip the wiring out of it, take it to Juarez, and they duplicate it and ship it to Detroit. So apparently it's never been solved.
Chrysler wasn't the only one with, that could be faulted on their wiring. I've got a 92 Mercedes, and when it was available, it was advised to me that I put a new upper wiring harness on the, an upper engine wiring harness on the hood. So I went ahead and did it. Well, it turns out some years later, the lower one went, which was the more complicated one. As it turns out, in that year particularly, Mercedes was convinced that in order to meet US regulations for recyclability and all this kind of thing, it would be a good idea if they made their wiring harnesses insulation in biodegradable material. Well, that only lasts so long, and your car may not be in the junkyard, but you do want it to run. And now I've got this car, it sends out all kinds of weird ghost signals throughout the whole system, and I can't buy a new wiring harness, and I can't find anybody to make one, including Greg Legat. He says, I can't make you one. So now you've got a car that is worthless because you can't get a harness.
Just run 12 volts to the coil and switch to the lights and drive it.
Yeah, I'll do that. Okay.
Burt, you said 57 was a difficult start to a year. The quality, it wasn't engineered completely and so forth. By 1958, were all those issues worked out, or did they continue?
No, they weren't all worked out, but they got down to a manageable level. I mean, there were people in 57 crying because of what we were producing. It was such a big problem.
But by 1959 in Detroit, all the 57s had rusted away, so it wasn't a big problem.
Yeah, was there an issue with the quality of the steel too, and the lack of, a problem with the quality of the steel that they used in 57, and the lack of, you know, corrosion, anti-corrosion proofing and all of that?
Well, I can't remember,
Hey,
probably in 57 we relied on wax inside
Jim was telling me.
of sills, which wasn't really good. And probably, we didn't immerse the whole car in any kind of a cleaner or primer at that time. That didn't come until 1960, which came with unibody.
Yeah, because if you pull the front fenders off a 60 Chrysler, the inner panels, you can see a line up about that far where no surface rust below, surface rust above, because there's no paint in there.
I've seen that just crawling under my car.
Yeah,
I can
it's
see
pretty
that.
easy to spot that line behind.
That would be 60 and beyond.
But that said, I think the car companies, in a way, it's not surprising that they would be caught off guard, because I can remember here, I lived in this little town of Zeeland, and they would put sand down, they would plow the roads, but they never put any salt down when I was a kid. Grand Rapids, you get a car rolling into town that had, you know, it's 3 years old and it's got the quarter panels rusted out, you knew they came out of Grand Rapids where they were spreading salt. And until they started this widespread spreading of salt, it really wasn't a very big issue. Things just got wet. Like you can go to North Dakota, well of course it's dry there too, but I mean, you can go to a lot of states that are wet and the cars don't rust out as long as they don't salt the roads. That's what killed them. And I think they were just 10, 15 years or more behind that happening.
But you know, in the Detroit area, they didn't have spreaders, they had dump trucks that they chained the tailgate open about 2 inches until, and when they stopped for a light, it just kept running out.
We still
A
have,
pile of salt that high, you had to drive over.
Well, that's what happens when you get a salt mine underneath.
Yeah, they got a salt mine up
Yeah,
there.
right.
I think they got it free there.
That's an area where the Japanese were behind us.
Yes.
Our corrosion protection is a lot better than Japanese cars.
Yep. I have an employee who I can remember in about 1988, he had a Datsun B210 and he was down in our truck well and whacking away at something. He was driving a big square of wood like this up his frame so that he could piece his frame back together with wood on his Datsun B210. So you're right, they were behind us.
Maybe he thought he had a Morgan.
I think there were two reasons. One is they underestimated the severity of the corrosion problems in the United States. The second one was Japanese cars. The life, like our cars are 11 years on the road or something like that. Their car is only 2 or 3 years on, maybe 4 years on the road. Because they have some very stringent inspection procedures which are so expensive that people decide to replace the car rather than to meet the standards.
Even today?
Oh, yeah, it's almost mandatory in Japan that the car lasts 2 or 3 years and you get
They
it
don't
done.
send them to the islands when they're done.
Oh,
If
really?
you go to Indonesia, that's all your old Japanese cars are down there.
I did not know that. That sounds more stringent than Germany. I know in Germany you can't have any rust through, you can't have accident damage, you can't drive them down the road that way. But that sounds more stringent yet.
Oh, it is.
Wow.
I always thought it was just part of the plan to keep the industry churning out new cars all the time. So, but I mean, even like little Kubota diesel engines, like you have in a lawn tractor or a little tractor, those things run 2-3 years in Japan, and then they're all pulled out and wholesaled to Europe or overseas, so you can buy replacement engines, you know, with 800 hours on them or 1,000 hours on them, because they're not allowed to run any more than a certain number of hours. I think, I've never been there, but I think Japan's a very strange place. I've got a friend who is a Japanese translator, and he likes Japan and Japanese. He was just translating for engineers last week. It's very strange by my standards.
I have a fellow worked for me, Ian Kanoshita in Japan, who was 16 years in Japan when the occupation came along, and a major took a liking to him and said that he would sponsor this young 16-year-old into an American university, pay for it, if he would go to the University of Maine, where this major had gone to. So Ian jumped at it, went to the University of Maine. When he got out, he applied to Chrysler Institute and got accepted at Chrysler. And so he didn't go back to Japan until he came back and was working for me. And what a wonderful, he didn't work as a translator. He worked as a general purpose guy in a liaison capacity. But what a wonderful translator, because as our office manager, Mr. Takeshita's son said, Mr. Kanoshita can interpret what they're thinking as well as what they say. Because he was 16 years Japanese and another 20 or 30 years American.
Sure.
And so he understood both cultures.
Yeah.
What a wonderful guy.
Interesting.
Anyway, we lost him to Scheller Globe. He became their vice president of purchasing and manufacturing. And we should have paid him whatever it took to keep him. He was so valuable.
What kind of advice do you have for FCA? What kind of advice do you have for FCA?
Well, I am a small car guy. So I would say to them, they ought to get a competitive small car. Get a competitive 30 mile per gallon car. They don't have any today, but that's the only advice that I guess I would give them.
But as long as gasoline
I'm,
is cheap.
I'm concerned that that's going to end up being a Jeep and a truck company. You know, there aren't going to be enough cars. And there aren't gonna be any 30-mile-per-gallon cars.
Jeeps, trucks, and a few Hellcats.
And some vans.
There's your niche market.
Yeah.
I like the dark, I don't have a car now, my wife has this Fusion, which our son is a retiree from Ford. He was a Ford sales executive, and he retired from there, and so he got us a really good deal on the Fusion. He has that. So I don't have a car, but the car I wanted was a Dart, and that went away. Then I wanted a Chrysler Sea Dream. That's went away, and they're going away.
Yeah. Now you could have bought the Hellcat from your son.
Yeah. My son had a 710 horsepower. He had to replace the rear tires at 10,000 miles. I didn't want to drive it. He let me ride on it.
Yeah.
And of course, he was enthusiastic about this car. And I put my head against the headrest because you really got to get your body in launch position. When he does 0 to 60 in 4 seconds.
Yeah, right. Wow.
I don't know, I'm worried about that kid because all he wants to do is go fast.
Well, there's a lot of protection in cars today. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble without getting hurt today. There's so much passenger protection in vehicles. It's astounding what people come through in accidents today.
Yeah, I'm probably a 60-mile-an-hour driver now, 60, 70 when I do drive. I don't drive them much anymore. In fact, that car is 1.5 years old and doesn't even have, it's probably 3,000 or 4,000 miles on it.
Yeah, you are backing off a bit, aren't you?
Yeah.
Wow. 2,000 miles a year. Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's good to see that you're driving yet, though. That's great.
Yeah, I can still
It
drive.
gives you a tremendous amount of freedom that you don't have once you stop driving. Anyway. That's good.
I've only had in the last 20 years, 10 years maybe, I've only had 20 years, I've only had 3 accidents.
Oh.
They all been in reverse. So be careful when I'm backing out of here.
Thank you, Bert. Thank you.
Or don't move my car now.
When go to all our kids' houses, they say, "Would you like to have me turn the car around, Dad?"
That's great. Yeah. Do you think that from your perspective as an engineer, what do you see coming down the road between gasoline, diesel, electric, hybrid? Do you have any opinions on where you think that's gonna?
Yeah, but my opinions probably aren't any good because I'm so traditional. I would be apprehensive about an electric-only car. I really would be. Unless I could get a 5-minute fill-up, and I don't see that happening.
Right.
I'm just probably obsolete. I can't even visualize that stuff.
How about self-driving? Let me ask you that. How do you feel about the self-driving cars that look like they are on the horizon?
I'm opposed to those two.
Are you?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm just old-fashioned. I really realize that now when I read all these things. You know, when I raise a hood now, I used to raise a hood and I could do anything under the hood, you know. I could adjust carburetors, I could do this, I could drive over here. Now I raise a hood, I don't even know where the spark plugs are.
Right.
Mostly all you see is plastic.
Right.
You know, it tells you an important point, I think. We didn't pay enough attention to what it looked like when you raised the hood. You know, when you look at some of our old cars, we got wires running everywhere, tubes running everywhere. And we weren't paying enough attention to what it looked like.
I think the cross ramps look really nice.
Huh?
The cross ramps look really nice.
Yeah,
That's about
they're
it.
impressive.
They are. You never stop for gas without checking your oil. Just so people walk by and go, what did you do to this car? Oh no, Chrysler did this. You're kidding.
But the worst was in the 70s and 80s with the tubing and the wires that just spaghettied all through the whole area. Nobody cared where anything ran.
No. We didn't even have, you know how our wiring was done, even when I first went to Japan. They designed the wiring, they designed the tubing, and way we did it is we made a model of it, you know, on a buck. We built a buck, and we did the wiring, and we did the tubing, and then we said to manufacturing, make it like this. In other words, and so the drawing came after the part was designed. In Japan, they were designing the tubing and designing the wiring harness when they were designing the car. And maybe they made changes to it, but they were doing it then. And we were doing it way afterward. It's a little like the, I told you the story about testing, water leak testing, you know. So I think now we probably do all, I don't know this, maybe John knows this, we probably now do all this stuff up front. Not like we did before.
Did you ever touch the turbine car program?
Only way I was involved, in 1950, I'm a student engineer in the Chrysler Institute of Engineering. I had 3-month assignment in the turbine, in the research department. In the department I was in was turbines. In that turbine were these names don't mean much to you, but Al Bell, who became head of turbines for General Motors, who they were going to do with trucks. Bill Chapman, who became head of turbines for Ford Motor Company. Sam Williams, who started his own company out in Walled Lake, small turbine for drones and for those kind of aircraft. Anyway, my job, I worked for Al Bell. My job was to design the centrifugal supercharger. And the way we did that, we used a French curve to get a nice curve, and that was the, I forget the name, I'll call it the modulus or something, anyway, the center of the area of the line. That's the way the air was going to flow in the centrifugal supercharger. I didn't do that. We did that off a French curve. Nice looking curve. My job was to cut sections a lot of them every inch. And because this section got smaller and smaller, these veins got smaller and smaller as you compress the air. My job, using a Freedom calculator,
I remember those.
my job using the Freedom calculator was to calculate the cross-sectional area at each point, all the way up, all the way through the outlet. So it was a very menial task. I mean, it'd be more interesting to be an accountant. You know,
Here I am.
than what I was doing. But anyway, so that was my involvement in the turbine car program. My second involvement was I got to drive one home overnight. And I don't know how well you know the Detroit area. John, of course, knows it. And anyway, I lived in Royal Oak at the time, or Beverly Hills, I forgot which. Anyway, I drove a turbine car. So I got to take the family for a drive. So they get in and we go up Woodward Avenue and pull into Ted's Drive-In. And all these kids are at Ted's Drive-In, you know, having their Coke and their hot dog and so on. And here comes this vacuum cleaner sweeping through there. They all heard it. out, they get rid of the trays, you know, throw them down on the ground, and they all chase following me. I'm like the Pied Piper, you know, with a bunch of kids following me. And they all wanted, on Woodward Avenue, and they all wanted to race. Every traffic light they wanted to race. Well, the Turbine car wasn't that good a performer.
No.
So if you floored it, I knew I was going to be last. So I never gave them the satisfaction of beating me. I just went away part throttle. But my God, was I the hit of Woodward Avenue that day. So now I've given them my total experience with the Turbine car. Oh, one other one. I was chief engineer of vehicle planning, and we were building. The body was built by Gio in Italy. They didn't know where to put this responsibility, so they stuck it in vehicle planning. So working for me was a guy named Dave